What is up, guys? Welcome back to OverTakes. This is Misfit, and today we're going to be talking about Week 8 in the Overwatch League, the third week of June Joust Qualifiers, and we're talking all the matches before the knockout rounds, so Thursday to Saturday, and then knockout rounds are on Sunday. We're going to do something before then, give you a little preview / prediction episode somewhere Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Probably going to end up posting up around when the Pacific matches are finishing up. But today we're talking about the matches that happened before all that. So before we dive in, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me. Everybody out there who's been supporting me, thank you very much. It's been greatly, greatly appreciated. And if you're new, I do Overwatch League content 2 to 3 times a week. This is going to be a 3 times a week. So I'd like to thank you for joining me. And if you hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell, you'll know when I have content coming up. That would be greatly appreciated. Okay, let's dive into it. We got a lot to talk about this week. First, I want to talk about the June Joust standings. Let's go over that really quick. And guys, if you need to see them, since they don't have them on the regular Overwatch League site, they just have the full season standings, go to Wikipedia. There'll be a link. I'll have it up on the screen here with these standings. So currently in the West, we have Atlanta and Houston in the top 2 spots. Then we have Boston, the Gladiators, the San Francisco Shock, and the Fuel are the teams that are in contention right now that are, if we ended today, would be locked in. Then below that, we have Paris, Florida, Toronto, who's out, Vancouver, who's out, Washington, who is on life support, and London, who is also out. Okay, now to the East. We have Shanghai on top. The East is kind of wacky because obviously less teams. So we have Shanghai on top, followed by Hangzhou, New York, and Guangzhou. That's your top 4 for the moment. And then below that, we have Seoul, Chengdu, Philly, and the Valiant, I would say, are the only team that are out. Guangzhou's playing twice this week. And also, it is a live event week in China. So just in case you're wondering about that, we have all the teams are going to be there that are China-based. So the Hunters, the Charge, the Spark, and the Dragons are all going to be there as far as I know. And then the Valiant, the Fusion, the Excelsior are all going to be playing from Korea. So it's going to be online, but with a live component to it. The Chinese teams are all going to be playing at home. And obviously, it's going to be LAN for when the Chinese teams play the other Chinese teams, so that's going to be fun. We finally get a live event. I can't wait to see what goes on. We missed out on the East getting anything last year, so that's going to be good to see. As far as the standings go, I would look to see, Chengdu, Philly, Seoul, one of those 3 teams is going to step up, I think, and take over the Charges spot, and possibly 2 of them, with New York being so-so at 2-2. The Charge being 1-1 going into this week, where they have a tough route. They got to play Philly and Chengdu, who both have to win to keep their chances alive. So that's going to be interesting. We have that. Now let's talk about the key matches I got for the week. As far as in NA, we're going to go with 2 matches this week. We're going to go with Dallas, Florida, and Boston and the LA Gladiators. And then we're going to do one from the West. We're going to do Chengdu and Seoul, which looks to be the biggest match of the week. Potentially. I mean, there's a lot of big matches in implications. I mean, you got Florida, Washington in the West. You have even the Boston-Paris match is big. So this tournament thing seems to be providing an air of urgency and things like that we wanted to see kind of last year. And I just like it. It does what the stages did, but with less matches. So there's a little bit more urgency going on. Oh, we also have Shock Washington as well. That's another big match. And even in East, you have Chengdu Hangzhou, another big one. Chengdu's got a interesting week. I said Chengdu played Guangzhou. I meant Seoul played Guangzhou. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on this week. It's going to be fun. So let's dive into these matches. And then, of course, we're going to end with a rundown where I go over everything, that all the picks, rapid fire, and we'll see if we can keep that momentum up that we started last week on that. Because we're not talking about the week before it. That didn't exist at all. Okay, so let's talk about the first match I have on here. My boys, the Florida Mayhem taking on the Dallas Fuel. Huge match. As far as overall standings, and for the June Joust. Now, both of these teams are kind of on the cusp of making it, being able to get in to said June Joust. Dallas sitting at 1-1 has a one map, +1 maps, and Florida is even on their map count at 1-1 as well. Florida looked shaky in both of their matches, kind of. I mean, yeah, they did play London, they beat them, but they did not look their best against Houston. They looked a little confused by the meta. Now, things have fleshed out a little bit since then. That week off, I think, in the middle helped them out a lot, where they got to see some other things and how other teams are doing comps and stuff like that, and how these teams are getting beat, what they need to do. Now, I think they run the double shield Echo with Echo and Ash pretty well, or McCree or Widow, BQB on hit scan, Yaki on Echo. I think that is one of their best looks. Did they look good doing? The only thing is Oj isn't as good on Orisa as he is on Monkey or Ryan, in my estimation. The biggest thing going into this match. Now, we talked about Florida for a second here. This whole match is going to be tank difference. And the one thing about Dallas, you can say what they want. We talked about them not having hit scan players to cover roles on certain maps, like Glister was being able to have free reign against them on Dorado, on Widow, and just other situations where you would like to have a hit scan on some of those control maps and things like that, where they didn't get owned, but the lack of that presence and utility and just damage output and all of the things, it did hurt them. They have worked around it really, really well. There's, some comps there's not a need. You can run the Monkey comp with a Reaper and an Echo, and that works really well. But there are times, even like on Anubis, for instance, like maps are going to play big in this, especially in Florida, from the Florida standpoint, where if you have Dorado and you have like Anubis or you have a couple of these maps, you're going to have a slight advantage in that you're going to be able to run a long-range hit scan at a higher level than Dallas if they try it, which they won't. But Dallas overall, though, fearless. Right now, best tank in the league. Oj is not far off if you look at the stats. We like to give Oj crap for this and that on past performance in years past. But this year, he's playing pretty damn well. And that even goes on the Orisa. He's been decent. But overall, I think Hanbin Fearless is better than Oj and Gargoyle. I just think that is the biggest difference in the game. You can go supports, maybe Jexay Fielder, but Gangnam Jin Slime is a pretty damn good duo. DPS, same thing, but they're a total different animal. You have a long range hit scan / mid range hit scan player in BQB, Yaki playing the projectile stuff, which he's phenomenal. Doha doing the same for Dallas, and then you have Sparkle doing anything from 76 to whatever, Reaper, playing all the things that he's good at and capable of doing. And now, I don't know anything about Pine showing up in this match or anything like that. I haven't heard anything. And if you have, please feel free to comment down below, because I have not seen a thing. So we're taking it as Pine's not playing in this one. So even in that scenario where Pine is in there, right now, I still like the Florida DPS, the Florida hit scan, at least better. I think that this is the even category. I think maybe you give the supports a little bit to Florida, but the biggest difference is going to be the tanks. And this is a match where Dallas, we're going to see if Dallas can continue to exist, without the hit scan player. Because Pine's not ready yet, and he might be in for the Joust. Like, if they get into the finals again, I think he'll be okay to play then, after playing it all. And I don't know what his status is, like where he's at. I haven't seen anything on that either. But if you're looking for him to be like the biggest difference in the world, I wouldn't count on it, because they're running pretty well without him. Just a select few maps where you're going to need him to almost to be a counter to the other person on the other team, more than someone going flat damage and destroying things. Because you can do that perfectly fine in most cases with Doha and Sparkle, in my estimation, from what I've seen. Especially with a room that Fearless creates in Hanbin. And Hanbin is good at harassing and doing and peeling and doing all the good things that an off tank does. And I would like to see him. Maybe they've worked on this after the San Francisco match, where you had Glister kind of running roughshod. Maybe peel a little bit or focus a little bit more if they run a Widowmaker on harassing the Widow. I would like to see a little bit more of that from them. Also, another point I would like to bring up in this is we talked about Florida's adaptation. They need a quality win. They've been existing on beating teams that are below them. They have not beaten a team that's above them. I mean, you could give the point that they beat Washington in the main melee in the knockout rounds. You could go with that as a team that was on their level / above them at that point. Washington was 4-0. They were 3-1. We can argue that as a quality win, but I'm not going with that because in certain situations, like we saw them play the Shock, they got buried. They got beat by Shanghai twice in the main melee, and then they got beat by Houston in this tournament qualifier stage. So I don't want to see them, as a fan, I want to see them win, obviously. For them to prove to me that they're a top 4 team, they have to beat somebody in the top 4 at some point, top 5, top 6, instead of just beating 10 down. And this is an opportunity for them to come out and show what they're made of and show that they are actually a top tier team, not a gatekeeper to the top 5 where they can't beat anybody above them. This is a big game for them in that respect, and also to keep their chances of going to the knockout round alive. Because if they lose to Dallas, they have Washington, who hasn't looked good, but is still Washington. If they lose to Dallas, they'll be 1-2. They'll have to win that game. They need to win both games to secure a spot, or at least attempt it, because there's a lot of teams that are 2-0. Boston's 2-0, San Francisco's 2-0, and the Gladiators are 2-0. So there's still even a chance at 3-1 you don't make it. So they have to beat Dallas to get ahead of them in the standings. And also for the season standings as well, there's a lot riding on the line here for the Mayhem. Almost more than there is for Dallas. I mean, yeah, there's a lot riding on it for Dallas, but I think Dallas has more of a grasp, is a better team right now than Florida. So here's my outlook on this match. I think Dallas is going to take this. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be 3-2. I think Florida wins if they get maps that favor the long-range hit scan, kind of like San Francisco did against Dallas, but I think it's going to be fairly close. But Dallas comes out on top. I don't like saying that. I don't like picking against my team, but it's just the way I see it. I think Dallas has a far greater advantage at tank, which right now is a huge difference. Tank diff is a big diff. So that for me, and I'm not saying Oj's playing bad. I'm just saying Firos is that much better, and Hanbin is that much better than the tank duo for the Mayhem. So Dallas 3-2 in that. Now let's talk about the next match we have up on the docket. Big one in the East. We have Chengdu taking on the Seoul Dynasty from the Hangzhou live event. At least live for Chengdu. I guess it's live for Seoul too, but they're still going to be in their confines of their building, office, whatever, wherever their area, their online play zone, whatever you want, whatever the fuck you call it. I don't even know. Can we get a name clarification on that? Overwatch League, John Spectre, give me a little something. What are we calling that? Anybody? But Chengdu Seoul. All right, Seoul. They tried the Roadhog shtick last week. Kind of worked against New York. Did not work against Shanghai. I don't know what's going to happen if they continue to do this. Now, it didn't look terrible, but it's so counterable with some of these comps with a team on a skill level of Shanghai that it's laughable. But they still ran it. They got kind of boomed later on in that match after they took the first point on control and to start the match. And then Shanghai was like, "Oh, you're going to run this. Okay, that's fine. Fleta, Lip, do your thing. Li Gong, Iziaki, do your stuff." Yeah, and you know, it was just kind of, it didn't work. Now, I want to see if they're going to run this again. It worked in the past, but Chengdu is weird. So I don't want to say Chengdu's Chengdu again, but they have a main tank now though that can play a bunch of different stuff, so they can counter things like the Roadhog Zarya, the Roadhog Diva, whatever configuration that Seoul runs, because they really weren't running that Seoul or the Sigma, I should say, not Diva. But there was a lot of things that Seoul was doing that were good, Like Profit and Fitz look fantastic, and Creative and Anima look decent enough. But the tank line, and it's a comp difference in this more than anything. I want to see if Chengdu can run the counters to that, if Seoul runs that. Seoul can run an Orisa Roadhog at a pretty high level. They can do that. I don't know if they switch to that, depending on what Chengdu does. Chengdu's going to want to run some ball. We know this. I do like Gaga a little bit better than Gesture on some things, or Marvel on some things. Some things not so much. If Gesture plays main tank, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get. Are we going to get feeding Gesture, or are we going to get teammate Gesture? It all depends on him if he's playing like Monkey or something like that. Roadhog, he can do whatever he does. Suit up and go do, his big baller stuff on Roadhog, and hopefully it works this time if they're going to do that. Chengdu, though, the one place that frightens me with them is their DPS is good. Jimmy is spotty, as we've seen over the course of time now watching him play. He's spotty. I would rather... Leave is fantastic, and has carried them through a lot of their wins and stuff like that. Yeah, there's been flashy stuff from Jinmu and Jimmy and things like that, but Leave is the key here. But is he going to be able to match with Fitz? I don't think so. Fitz is playing in a different zone right now, and Profit has gotten the echo down, so I don't know where you're going to go here on DPS with Chengdu. Do you pull out some weird shit? Who knows? They could figure something out that we haven't seen yet. And they often do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that, and I think the supports for Seoul are playing a lot better. So my outlook on this match, I am looking at... Now, the winner of this is probably going to get into the knockout round. Probably has a good shot at getting into the knockout round. Especially if you look at Seoul, they got Guangzhou later. And Chengdu, maybe not. They have to win 2 matches against 2 of the tougher teams right now in this meta, sort of. Maybe with Seoul, I don't know. They got to beat Seoul and they got to beat Hangzhou. Let's just call it that. Hangzhou's going to be tough to beat. They are at home this weekend on top of it. So, home field advantage for the Hangzhou Spark against Chengdu and the Valiant. So, we'll see how that plays out. And the last match is going to be a live one. So, in other words, both teams are there, which I'm excited to see another live match. It makes me happy that we're kind of getting back into the flow, because it's one of the things that made Overwatch League, to me, special, was the crowd. Whether it was Blizzard Arena or those homestands that we had last year, we got that again, and I want to see what happens here. But anyway, back to this match. I'm avoiding my pick here for some reason, but I'm taking Seoul 3-1. I think it's going to be a little close to start when they feel each other out, but I think Seoul has figured some stuff out, and they have the players and the capability to beat anybody, so I am looking at them to win this 3-1 over Chengdu. Now, let's go back to the West, and let's talk about a team that I have not featured since... We haven't had a featured match since maybe Stage 2 of Season 2. And that's the Boston Uprising, who are sitting at 2-0, taking on the Gladiators, who look really, really good right now in this meta. Also at 2-0 going into the June Joust. My look on this match, all right. We need to look at, is Boston real, or do the teams they play just aren't performing in this hero pool system, or this iteration of hero pools, being Washington and Toronto, because Toronto's look kind of meh, and Washington look god-awful. And Boston, on the other hand, though, I am not knocking them here, or there, I should say. They looked good. They played crisp, they played soundly, they were coordinated, and the new off-tank shuttling in a little bit for Punk with Gary Busey? Gary Busey, we're calling him Gary Busey. Gary Busey came in, and he looked good. And I think it made a difference a little bit. Maybe it was communication, him and Stan One. I don't know. But they looked a lot better, and Myeongbong is looking good still. In this match, keys for me. Boston looks good. Gladiators looked great last week. They both had 2-0 weeks, and the Gladiators beat Atlanta, who was the best team so far that we saw before, week 7. in week 1, or in week 6, they took care of, Atlanta looked almost unbeatable. So Gladiators took care of them, and they won their other match too against, they won their first match against Vancouver, who was subbing in a new main tank. So who knows what their actual status is. Vancouver, I mean, they're bad anyway, but with that added thing in there, but the Gladiators took care of business. Key thing here, if when we're looking at this, Boston's DPS is not, all three of them are not as good as the Birdring Kevster duo, with Birdring on the hit scan and Kevster playing Echo. Kevster's Echo has been looking really, really good. I said it in the review. I was a little surprised because sometimes they ran mirror and things like that, but Kevster looked really good, and Birdring looked like he's Birdring again. He had a couple of moments where he was just old school in it. A lot of it was against Vancouver, but still, he looked great doing the hit scan stuff. And I'm not knocking Boston's DPS by any stretch. Valentine and IM37, they look decent most of the time, but I just don't think they have what it takes to hang with Birdring and Kevster. They're elite level at this point, and the way they've been playing the last, even if you go back to the last week of non-hero pools in the May Melee, Mirror, Birdring, it's mostly Birdring is doing a lot, and Echo play from Kevster is bringing a lot more. And I don't think Boston can hang with the amount of damage they can do, because when you don't have the Sombra or certain characters in Sombra Tracer, more Sombra than anything with the Echo, there's no ability to hack Echo and just kind of keep her at bay. I mean, yeah, long range hit scan, you can kind of do that, but these guys are used to dodging, with Echo against long range hit scan. It's the hacks and things like that keep Echo from building up that ult charge and getting all of the, getting the duplicates and the whatnot and the what have you. Also, it just, the tank line for Boston, once again, decent. I don't think it's quite on the level of the Gladiators, but I think they could keep it close depending on what we see run. I mean, obviously, we're getting a lot of Monkey, and Orisa is pretty much the mainstay. I don't know if there's anything Boston's got up their sleeve. I mean, we've seen Seoul try weird shit, but I don't think Boston's going to do that. I think they have a good shot in this to keep it close, but I think just the overall skill level, and I also think that the Gladiators, I think Shu and Myeongbong are about even, but Moth and Faith, I got to lean Moth, and even Skewed when he's in there on the brig, he's looked really good on that. So they seem to have nailed all of the stuff down that they need to, substitutions and all that. I think the Gladiators are on a good track here. I am taking the Gladiators in this one 3-1, in a close 3-1. And I don't want you guys to think that it's like I'm not calling like for a blowout. Maybe it's a, whatever map win for Boston. I think it's going to be fairly close. I do think skill in this one wins out overall from the Gladiators. I think they continue their path to making it to the June Joust finals and potentially a number 1 seed. They just look that good. And Boston, I still think, is in a good spot to make it in. Boston starts off against Paris. I think that's a win for them. And I think this could either make them 4-0 or 3-1 and potentially solidify a spot, seeing where the other teams are. If they win, and they beat Paris, then they're in. Same thing with the Gladiators. If they beat Boston and then beat Paris, they're in. So at 4-0, if these teams get to 4-0, they're going to be in, because the top 2 teams right now are 3-1. So that is going to be my featured matches of the week. So we have in the 3 featured matches, I have Dallas beating Florida 3-2, Seoul beating Chengdu 3-1, and the Gladiators beating the Boston Uprising 3-1. Now, let's go to our Week 8 rundown, where we go over all of the picks in the league, and I do them in a rapid-fire, really fast, bang-them-out fashion. So, let's get ready to do this, guys. All right. So, we're going to start off on this. Remember, this is the early week, guys. Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Boston Uprising taking on the Paris Eternal. I have the Boston Uprising 3-1. Next match, we talked about it earlier. in one of our feature matches. Dallas Fuel 3-2 over the Mayhem. Over to the east, from Hangzhou, live, we have at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Guangzhou taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. I think the Philadelphia Fusion bounced back 3-1 in this one. Next up, one of the other matches we talked about, the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Seoul Dynasty. I have Seoul taking the Chengdu Hunters 3-1. Last match from the east on Friday, we have the Valiant taking on the Spark at home, 3-0 Spark. Back to the east for Friday. I keep saying Saturday, I meant Friday. Back to the east on Friday. We have the match we just talked about, Gladiators 3-1 over Boston. Next up, Shock over the Vancouver Titans 3-0. I'm going for a 19-minute match time on this one. Final match in the east on Saturday, Florida Mayhem taking on the Washington Justice, Florida 3-1. Okay, final day from the east, Saturday, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Philadelphia Fusion Valiant, Fusion 3-0. Next up, Dynasty versus Charge. I am going with the Dynasty 3-1. Final match from the east in the preliminary qualifiers for the knockout round, Hangzhou Spark in a nail-biter over the Chengdu Hunters 3-2. The final day from NA, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Gladiators 3-0 over Paris. Next up, Dallas taking on Vancouver. I have Dallas 3-0. Final match of the preliminary qualifiers in NA, I have the Shock beating the Justice 3-0. And that's going to be the rundown. So that's my outlook on this week. Don't forget, I am going to be doing something after these matches before we get into the knockouts. I'm going to give a quick just prediction show. We're going to, briefly recap a couple of the big matches, the keys, how teams got into the knockout round, and then I'm going to unleash my bracket, as it were, for the knockouts for both sides of who I think is going to go to the June Joust. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. Everybody out there who's been giving me support, thank you very much. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. All of you guys that are new, thanks for sticking around, hanging out with us today. Please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell. You know when I have Overwatch League content coming up. This is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you on the next one.